Across the vast landscapes of Africa, there are places where the boundary between the physical world and the spiritual world is believed to grow thin. Hidden beyond villages, rivers, and farmlands lie forests that local communities have protected for centuries, not with fences or written laws, but with reverence, fear, and sacred tradition. These are the sacred forests of Africa, places where nature is not simply a resource to be used, but a living sanctuary believed to be inhabited by spirits, ancestors, and divine forces. To many African societies, a forest is far more than a collection of trees. It is a spiritual domain, a sacred inheritance from those who came before. For generations, these forests have been surrounded by stories, rituals, and powerful taboos that guide how people interact with them. In many communities, elders teach children from an early age that certain groves must never be disturbed. Some trees must never be cut. Certain animals must never be hunted. Even stepping into a sacred forest without permission can be considered a serious spiritual offense. These unwritten rules form a complex system of belief that protects the forest while reinforcing the community's connection to the unseen world. Throughout West Africa, Central Africa, and parts of East and Southern Africa, sacred forests are known by many names but share similar meanings. Among the Yoruba of Nigeria, sacred groves are places dedicated to powerful deities such as Osun, where rituals and festivals honor the spirit believed to dwell within the forest. In Ghana, sacred groves have long been associated with ancestral spirits who continue to watch over the living. In Benin, forests are often connected to Vodun spiritual practices, where priests and priestesses maintain sacred spaces that outsiders cannot freely enter. Even in remote regions of Kenya and Tanzania, traditional communities preserve forest areas believed to be guarded by invisible spiritual forces. What makes these forests remarkable is not just their spiritual importance, but also their age. Many sacred forests have existed for hundreds, sometimes even thousands of years. Long before the arrival of modern conservation movements, long before environmental laws were written, African communities had already developed systems to protect these natural spaces. The protection was not enforced by governments or police, but by belief in ancestors who never truly left the land, belief in spirits who guarded sacred ground, and belief that disrespecting nature could bring terrible consequences. In these traditions, the forest is often seen as the dwelling place of powerful spiritual beings. Some communities believe the spirits of their ancestors gather in these forests, watching over the living descendants who honor them through rituals and offerings. Others believe that nature deities, guardians of rivers' fertility, rain, and life itself, reside deep among the ancient trees. Certain places within the forest may be considered especially sacred: a giant tree, a quiet clearing, a spring of water, or a cluster of ancient stones where ceremonies are performed. These places are not entered casually. They are approached with caution, humility, and respect. Because of this deep spiritual connection, sacred forests are often treated very differently from ordinary land. While surrounding areas may be used for farming, hunting, or gathering firewood, the sacred grove remains untouched. The forest becomes a kind of spiritual boundary, a protected sanctuary where nature is allowed to grow undisturbed. Even those who do enter these spaces, such as priests, healers, or ritual leaders, often follow strict ceremonial rules before doing so. They may offer prayers, pour libations, or ask permission from the spirits before stepping beneath the trees. These forests are also places where communities gather during important rituals and ceremonies. Festivals honoring local deities, rites of passage, healing ceremonies, and ancestral commemorations often take place within or near these sacred groves. In these moments, the forest becomes more than a physical location. It becomes a bridge connecting the living, the dead, and the spiritual forces believed to shape the world. Drums echo through the trees. Offerings are placed upon the earth, and generations come together to honor traditions that have survived for centuries. Yet what makes sacred forests especially fascinating is that their protection relies not on visible barriers, but on invisible laws, taboos deeply embedded within the culture. These taboos govern what can and cannot be done within these spaces. To outsiders, such rules may appear mysterious or even superstitious. But within the community, they are powerful moral codes that shape behavior and preserve harmony between people, nature, and the spiritual realm. For those who grow up within these traditions, the warnings are clear and memorable. Anyone who cuts a sacred tree may face misfortune. A hunter who kills an animal within the grove may anger the spirits. Someone who enters the forest with disrespect or selfish intentions could invite illness, bad luck, or even tragedy. Whether these consequences are understood as spiritual punishment or as social enforcement, the effect is the same. The forest remains protected. In this way, sacred forests stand as silent witnesses to centuries of cultural wisdom. They reveal a worldview in which humans are not masters of nature, but participants within a larger spiritual ecosystem. Every tree, animal, and river may carry meaning beyond its physical form. The forest is not empty wilderness. It is alive with presence, memory, and sacred power. As modern societies continue to search for ways to protect the natural world, these ancient traditions raise an important question. Long before environmental science spoke of biodiversity and conservation, African communities had already created systems that preserved forests for generations. They did so through stories, beliefs, rituals, and taboos that shaped how people understood the land around them. To understand the sacred forests of Africa is therefore to explore more than ecology. It is to step into a worldview where nature and spirituality are inseparable, where ancestors walk quietly among ancient trees, and where the survival of the forest depends on invisible laws passed down through countless generations. And at the heart of these traditions lies a powerful idea that certain places in nature are not meant to be conquered or consumed, but respected, protected, and honored as sacred. In many African traditional societies, the protection of sacred forests has never depended on written rules or government enforcement. Instead, these natural sanctuaries are guarded by something far older and far more powerful within the culture: taboos. These unwritten laws are deeply woven into the moral and spiritual fabric of the community, passed down through generations by elders, storytellers, priests, and parents. Taboos shape how people interact with the land, the spirits, and with each other. They are not merely customs or suggestions within traditional belief systems. They are sacred obligations whose violation can disturb the delicate balance between the human world and the unseen spiritual realm. A taboo in this context is a prohibition rooted in spiritual meaning. It defines actions that are forbidden because they are believed to anger ancestral spirits, offend gods, or disrupt the natural harmony of a sacred place. In communities where sacred forests exist, these taboos function as invisible laws that protect the land from exploitation. Even without guards or fences, people obey these restrictions because they believe the consequences of breaking them could be severe, both spiritually and socially. One of the most common taboos surrounding sacred forests is the prohibition against cutting trees. In many traditions, certain trees are believed to be the dwelling places of spirits or ancestors. Some are thought to hold the spiritual energy of the land itself. Cutting such a tree is not seen simply as damaging nature. It is viewed as an act of disrespect toward powerful forces. Stories are often told of individuals who attempted to cut sacred trees and later suffered illness, mysterious accidents, or repeated misfortune. Whether interpreted as spiritual punishment or powerful cultural warning, these stories reinforce the rule: the forest must remain untouched. Hunting within sacred forests is also widely forbidden. Many communities believe that animals living in these protected groves belong to the spirits and serve as their messengers or companions. Certain animals may be seen as sacred themselves, representing particular deities or ancestral guardians. Killing such creatures is believed to bring spiritual consequences, not only to the hunter, but sometimes to the entire community. Because of these beliefs, wildlife within sacred forests often lives without fear of human interference, creating rare pockets where animals thrive undisturbed. Another important taboo concerns the gathering of resources. In ordinary forests, people might collect firewood, medicinal herbs, fruits, or building materials. But in sacred groves, taking anything without ritual permission is often forbidden. The belief is that the forest's resources belong first to the spirits who reside there. Only spiritual leaders, such as priests, healers, or designated elders, may sometimes enter to collect sacred plants used in rituals or healing ceremonies. Even then, they follow strict ceremonial procedures before doing so. Prayers may be offered, libations poured, and permission requested from the spirits who guard the forest. Entering the sacred forest itself can also be restricted. In some communities, only specific individuals are allowed inside, especially in the deeper and more sacred sections of the grove. These individuals may include priests, spiritual mediums, or elders entrusted with the responsibility of maintaining communication with the spiritual world. Others may only enter during special ceremonies or festivals when the entire community participates in honoring the spirits. Outside these occasions, wandering into the sacred forest without proper purpose or permission is considered extremely dangerous, not only spiritually, but socially as well. The enforcement of these taboos often lies in the hands of respected custodians of tradition. Elders play a critical role in teaching younger generations about the sacred rules of the land. Through storytelling, rituals, and daily guidance, they ensure that cultural knowledge is preserved. Spiritual leaders such as priests, diviners, and healers also act as guardians of these sacred laws. They interpret signs from the spiritual world, conduct ceremonies to maintain harmony, and sometimes determine when a taboo has been broken and what must be done to restore balance. In many cases, when a taboo is believed to have been violated, rituals of cleansing or appeasement may be required. Offerings might be presented to the spirits, sacrifices performed, or communal prayers conducted to prevent further misfortune. These ceremonies reinforce the seriousness of the taboo and remind the community of the sacred relationship they maintain with the natural world. The purpose is not merely punishment, but restoration, restoring the harmony that binds people, ancestors, and nature together. What is remarkable about these systems is how effectively they regulate human behavior without formal institutions. Long before modern environmental laws existed, these cultural rules ensured that certain forests remained untouched for centuries. Fear of spiritual consequences created a powerful psychological boundary that discouraged overexploitation. Respect for ancestors and deities made the protection of sacred forests a moral responsibility shared by the entire community. At the same time, taboos are not only about fear. They're also about reverence. They remind people that the land is not simply a possession, but a sacred inheritance. Each generation receives it from those who came before and must protect it for those who will come after. The forest becomes a living symbol of continuity, linking past, present, and future through shared belief and responsibility. For many African communities, the idea that nature must be respected is not an abstract environmental principle. It is embedded directly within spiritual life. The trees are not merely biological organisms. They are witnesses to ancestral presence. The animals are not just wildlife. They may carry spiritual meaning. The forest itself becomes a sacred territory where human ambition must stop and humility must begin. Because of this worldview, the taboos surrounding sacred forests operate as a powerful form of cultural protection. They transform ordinary landscapes into protected sanctuaries without the need for modern conservation policies. They teach restraint in a world where resources could easily be overused. And they remind communities that some places are meant to remain untouched, not because humans cannot enter them, but because they choose to honor something greater than themselves. These hidden laws, passed down through generations without being written, have quietly protected many of Africa's most sacred natural sanctuaries. And behind each taboo lies a deeper belief that the forest is not empty land waiting to be claimed, but a sacred domain where the human world and the spirit world meet. To truly understand why sacred forests are protected with such devotion, one must look beyond the physical landscape and into the spiritual beliefs that surround these places. In many African traditional religions, the forest is not simply a natural environment. It is a spiritual territory inhabited by powerful unseen beings. These beings may include ancestral spirits, nature deities, and mysterious guardians who are believed to watch over the land. The presence of these forces transforms the forest into a living sanctuary where every tree, animal, and stream may carry spiritual meaning. Among many African communities, the ancestors are believed to remain closely connected to the world of the living even after death. Rather than disappearing completely, they are thought to exist in a spiritual realm that overlaps with the physical world. Sacred forests often serve as places where this connection is strongest. It is believed that the spirits of the departed gather in these groves, observing the actions of their descendants and guiding the fate of the community. Because of this belief, entering such forests is not treated casually. People approach with humility, aware that they may be walking in the presence of those who came before them. In some traditions, certain parts of the forest are believed to be the meeting places of the ancestors. These might be ancient trees whose roots twist deep into the earth, quiet clearings where rituals are performed, or sacred stones that have been used for ceremonies for generations. Offerings such as palm wine, food, kola nuts, or animal sacrifices may be placed at these locations to honor the spirits and ask for their protection. During important festivals, entire communities may gather near these sacred sites to perform rituals that reaffirm their relationship with the ancestors who continue to guide their lives. Alongside ancestral spirits, many African belief systems also recognize powerful nature deities who reside within forests. These spiritual beings are often seen as guardians of natural forces such as fertility, rain, rivers, and wildlife. In some regions, particular forests are believed to belong to a specific deity who protects the land and ensures the well-being of the people who respect it. Priests and priestesses dedicated to these deities serve as intermediaries between the community and the spiritual guardians of the forest. One well-known example can be found in southwestern Nigeria, where the Osun-Osogbo Sacred Grove is dedicated to the river goddess Osun. For centuries, local people have believed that the goddess resides within the forest along the riverbanks. The grove has remained protected not only because of cultural tradition, but because it is considered the home of a powerful divine presence. Rituals and annual festivals bring thousands of people to honor the goddess, and the forest remains one of the most carefully preserved sacred sites in the region. But not all spiritual guardians of the forest are understood as benevolent or protective. Many traditions also speak of mysterious spirits who defend sacred territories from intruders. These guardians are sometimes described as invisible beings who punish those who violate the sacred laws of the forest. Stories circulate within communities about individuals who ignored warnings and entered restricted areas, only to become lost, fall ill, or experience strange misfortunes afterward. Whether these stories are interpreted literally or symbolically, they reinforce the belief that sacred forests are protected by forces beyond human control. In some legends, the spirits of the forest can even manifest themselves through unusual signs in nature. Sudden winds rustling through still trees, unexplained animal behavior, or strange sounds heard deep within the forest may be interpreted as signals from the spiritual world. For believers, these signs are reminders that the forest is not silent or empty. It is alive with presence, and humans are only visitors within a domain that belongs primarily to the spirits. Because of these beliefs, people who must enter sacred forests for rituals often perform careful preparations beforehand. Spiritual leaders may conduct cleansing ceremonies to purify themselves before stepping into the grove. Offerings are made to request permission from the spirits, and prayers are spoken to ensure safe passage. In some cases, special clothing or symbolic markings are worn during these rituals, reflecting the sacred nature of the journey into the forest. Diviners and healers may also enter sacred forests to communicate with spiritual forces or to gather medicinal plants believed to possess powerful healing properties. However, even they must follow strict traditions when doing so. Plants cannot simply be harvested at random. They must be taken with respect and accompanied by prayers or offerings. The belief is that the healing power of the plant comes not only from its physical properties, but also from the blessing of the spirits who guard it. The relationship between the community and the forest spirits is therefore built on a delicate balance of respect and reciprocity. The people honor the spirits through rituals, offerings, and adherence to taboos, while the spirits are believed to provide protection, fertility, and guidance in return. When this balance is maintained, the community believes it will enjoy prosperity and harmony with the natural world. But if the balance is broken, if sacred laws are ignored, or the forest is disrespected, misfortune may follow. These spiritual beliefs also give sacred forests a powerful role in shaping moral behavior. The idea that ancestors and spiritual guardians are watching encourages people to act responsibly not only toward the land, but toward each other. The forest becomes a silent witness to the conduct of the community, reminding everyone that their actions are part of a larger spiritual order. Through these beliefs, sacred forests become far more than ecological spaces. They become spiritual landscapes where the invisible and the visible worlds intersect. The towering trees are not merely ancient plants. They are pillars of sacred realm. The animals moving through the undergrowth may carry messages from the spirit world. The wind passing through the branches may be interpreted as the whisper of ancestors who continue to guide the living. For centuries, these beliefs have given sacred forests a profound sense of protection and reverence. People do not guard the forest simply because they fear punishment. They protect it because they believe it is home to powerful forces that deserve honor and respect. The forest is therefore not owned by humans. It is shared with the spirits, the ancestors, and the guardians who have watched over it long before any living generation was born. And it is this deep spiritual relationship that has helped preserve many of Africa's sacred forests across centuries. Long before scientists began to study ecosystems or governments created protected reserves, communities were already safeguarding these places out of reverence for the unseen beings believed to dwell within them. The forest survived because people believed it was sacred and because the spirits who guarded it were never forgotten. When modern scientists and environmental researchers began studying Africa's sacred forests more closely, they discovered something remarkable. Many of these protected groves contain levels of biodiversity far greater than the surrounding landscapes. Rare trees that have disappeared from nearby farmland still grow within the sacred boundaries. Animals that have been hunted out of neighboring regions continue to live quietly within these protected areas. Streams that have dried up elsewhere still flow beneath the shade of ancient trees. Without realizing it in modern scientific terms, traditional African communities had created one of the most effective conservation systems in the world. For centuries, the taboos and spiritual beliefs surrounding sacred forests prevented people from exploiting these areas. While nearby lands were cleared for farming, grazing, or settlement, the sacred groves remained untouched. Trees that might normally have been cut for firewood or construction were protected because they were believed to belong to the spirits. Animals that might have been hunted were spared because killing them was considered a violation of sacred law. Even gathering fallen branches or medicinal plants was restricted in many places unless permission was granted through ritual. The result of these cultural practices was the preservation of ecosystems that might otherwise have disappeared. Sacred forests became small islands of ancient wilderness surrounded by human development. In many regions where forests have been heavily reduced by agriculture or logging, sacred groves are sometimes the last surviving fragments of the original natural landscape. Within these pockets of protected land, plants and animals have been able to survive for generations. Researchers studying sacred forests in countries such as Ghana, Nigeria, and Benin have found that these areas often contain plant species that are no longer found in surrounding forests. Some of these plants are valuable medicinal herbs used in traditional healing practices. Others are rare tree species that once dominated the region before widespread deforestation began. Because the sacred groves were protected by cultural beliefs rather than economic interests, they preserved genetic diversity that might otherwise have been lost. Wildlife has also benefited from these ancient protections. Birds, monkeys, reptiles, insects, and countless other species often find refuge within sacred forests where hunting is forbidden. In areas where large animals have disappeared due to human activity, sacred groves may still serve as safe habitats for smaller species that rely on dense vegetation and undisturbed environments. The thick canopy of old trees provides shelter, nesting sites, and food sources that cannot easily be recreated once destroyed. Water systems are another crucial element preserved by sacred forests. Trees play a vital role in maintaining the balance of local ecosystems by protecting soil and regulating water flow. In many sacred groves, springs and small rivers continue to flow because the surrounding forest remains intact. The roots of ancient trees hold the soil in place, preventing erosion and allowing water to filter slowly through the ground. Communities living nearby often depend on these natural water sources. Even if they do not always connect this benefit directly to the protection of the sacred forest. Soil fertility is also strengthened by the presence of these protected areas. The layers of fallen leaves, decomposing wood, and organic matter within sacred forests create rich soil that supports complex plant life. In contrast, land that has been cleared repeatedly for farming may lose nutrients over time. The sacred forest therefore acts as a natural reservoir of ecological health, quietly maintaining the balance of the surrounding environment. What makes this system particularly fascinating is that it emerged without formal scientific knowledge about ecology. The people who established these traditions did not speak of biodiversity, ecosystems, or climate regulation in the language used by modern researchers. Yet through spiritual belief and cultural practice, they developed rules that produced many of the same results that modern conservationists now strive to achieve. Their motivation was not scientific theory, but reverence for the sacred. In many ways, sacred forests demonstrate that cultural values can be as powerful as environmental laws when it comes to protecting nature. Governments may create protected parks, but these require enforcement, funding, and constant monitoring. Sacred groves, by contrast, were protected by belief systems deeply rooted in the community's identity. People did not obey the rules because they feared fines or legal punishment. They obeyed because they believed the consequences of disrespecting the forest could come from the spiritual world itself. This cultural protection also created a strong sense of collective responsibility. The entire community understood that preserving the sacred forest was essential for maintaining harmony between humans, nature, and the spiritual realm. Elders passed these values to younger generations through stories, ceremonies, and daily teaching. Children grew up knowing that certain places must be respected, not exploited. Through this shared understanding, the forest became part of the community's moral landscape. In recent decades, environmental scientists have begun to recognize the importance of these traditional conservation systems. Some sacred forests have been studied as models for sustainable environmental protection, showing how indigenous knowledge can complement modern ecological science. In certain cases, Governments and conservation organizations now work alongside local communities to preserve sacred groves not only as cultural heritage sites, but also as vital ecological reserves. However, the survival of these forests has never depended solely on scientific recognition. Their true strength lies in the beliefs that have protected them for centuries. The spiritual significance of sacred forests created a natural barrier against the destructive forces that often accompany human expansion. While modern society often separates religion, culture, and environmental management, traditional African communities treated them as parts of the same interconnected system. Within this worldview, protecting the forest was not just about preserving trees or animals. It was about maintaining balance within the entire universe of relationships between people, ancestors, spirits, and nature. The forest was sacred because it was part of a living spiritual order that humans were expected to respect. Today, as the world faces growing environmental challenges, from deforestation to climate change, the story of Africa's sacred forests offers an important lesson. Long before global discussions about conservation began, communities were already protecting ecosystems through cultural wisdom and spiritual responsibility. The hidden laws of the forest, guided by taboos and reverence for the unseen world, quietly preserved landscapes that might otherwise have vanished. These sacred groves stand as living proof that protecting nature does not always require modern technology or formal legislation. Sometimes, the most powerful protection comes from belief, tradition, and a deep understanding that the natural world is not merely something to be used, but something to be honored and safeguarded for generations yet to come. Despite the centuries of protection that sacred forests have enjoyed, many of these ancient sanctuaries now face challenges unlike anything their guardians encountered in the past. Across Africa, rapid social and environmental changes are reshaping the relationship between people and the land. Expanding cities, growing populations, commercial agriculture, logging, and mining projects are placing increasing pressure on forests that were once protected by tradition alone. At the same time, the cultural beliefs that once guarded these sacred spaces are gradually weakening in some communities as younger generations move toward modern lifestyles and different religious influences. In the past, the authority of elders, priests, and traditional leaders played a powerful role in maintaining respect for forest taboos. Their words carried weight because they were seen as guardians of ancestral wisdom. When an elder warned that a particular grove was sacred or that a certain tree must never be cut, few people would dare to question it. The fear of spiritual punishment, combined with deep respect for tradition, created a strong barrier that kept sacred forests intact for generations. But in many places today, that authority is no longer as strong as it once was. Modern education, urban migration, and the influence of global culture have introduced new ways of thinking about the world. Some younger people may view traditional beliefs about spirits and taboos as outdated or symbolic rather than literal. As a result, the invisible protections that once safeguarded sacred forests can begin to erode. When belief fades, the forest may begin to appear not as a sacred sanctuary, but simply as unused land that could be cleared for farming, harvested for timber, or developed for economic gain. Religious changes have also played a role in this shift. The spread of major world religions, such as Christianity and Islam, has transformed spiritual life across many parts of Africa. While many communities continue to honor their ancestral traditions alongside these newer faiths, others have gradually abandoned older beliefs about forest spirits and sacred groves. In some cases, sacred forests have been cut down because the taboos that once protected them were no longer considered meaningful. Economic pressures further complicate the situation. In rural areas where families struggle to survive, the need for farmland, firewood, or building materials can become more urgent than preserving a piece of forest whose sacred value may not be universally recognized anymore. Logging companies and mining operations may also target forested regions rich in natural resources. Without strong cultural or legal protection, even sacred groves that survived for centuries can quickly disappear. Yet the story of sacred forests is not only one of decline. In many places, communities are beginning to rediscover the importance of these ancient traditions. Environmental scientists, cultural historians, and local leaders are increasingly recognizing that sacred forests hold value not only as spiritual sites, but also as critical ecological reserves. Some sacred groves now receive formal protection as heritage sites or conservation areas, blending traditional respect with modern environmental policy. This renewed interest has encouraged efforts to preserve both the forests and the cultural knowledge associated with them. Elders are sharing stories with younger generations about the meaning of sacred groves and the ancestors who once protected them. Cultural festivals connected to sacred forests are being revived, bringing communities together to celebrate traditions that might otherwise fade away. In some regions, schools and community organizations are even teaching students about the ecological and cultural significance of sacred forests, helping them understand that these traditions contain valuable lessons for the modern world. Conservation groups have also begun collaborating with local communities to support the protection of sacred groves. Rather than replacing traditional systems with outside authority, many of these initiatives work alongside elders and spiritual leaders who already serve as guardians of these sites. By respecting local beliefs and cultural practices, these partnerships aim to strengthen the very traditions that preserve the forests in the first place. One of the most powerful lessons offered by sacred forests is the idea that nature protection does not have to rely solely on laws or technology. For generations, communities protected entire ecosystems through shared belief, cultural responsibility, and spiritual respect. These systems encouraged people to think of the forest not as property to be exploited, but as a sacred inheritance that must be cared for and passed on to future generations. This perspective is increasingly relevant in a world struggling with environmental crises. Modern society often views nature primarily through economic or scientific lenses, focusing on resources, productivity, and development. But sacred forest traditions remind us that the relationship between humans and nature can also be guided by reverence, humility, and moral responsibility. When people believe that the land itself is sacred, they are far less likely to destroy it. The survival of Africa's sacred forests may therefore depend not only on environmental policy, but also on the preservation of cultural memory. The stories of ancestors, spirits, and sacred taboos carry deeper meanings about respect for the natural world. Even for those who do not interpret these beliefs literally, the traditions contain a powerful message about living in harmony with nature rather than dominating it. As communities continue to navigate the balance between tradition and modern life, sacred forests remain symbols of an ancient wisdom that still speaks to the present. Their towering trees have witnessed centuries of human history, cultural change, and spiritual devotion. Within their shade lie stories of ancestors who understood that protecting the land was essential for the survival of the people themselves. Whether through spiritual belief, cultural heritage, or modern conservation efforts, the future of these forests will depend on remembering the values that once protected them. If those values endure, the sacred groves of Africa may continue to stand as living sanctuaries, places where nature, history, and spirituality remain deeply intertwined. In the end, the hidden laws of the forest remind us of a simple but profound truth. When humans treat nature as sacred, they create powerful reasons to protect it. And in a world where the natural environment faces unprecedented threats, the ancient wisdom preserved within Africa's sacred forests may offer guidance that is more important now than ever before.